guys, how are you? My name is Lauren B. Welcome to the Untitled Tarot. So this is going to be just a collective reading for whoever needs it. If it don't apply, let it fly, as they say. I have quite a few decks out here for you today. I have the Spirit Animal Oracle deck, I have the Magic of You Oracle, and I also have the Fountain Tarot that we're rocking with. The first thing I want to talk about is your shufflemancy. The song that came up for you this week was Evacuate the Dance Floor by Cascada, which is a bop and a half, I will tell you that. However, that song came out when I was transitioning from high school into college. And that makes me think of a journey to independence. It also makes me think of a journey to sort of like self-identity. And when we're talking about evacuating a dance floor, I get this impression that a lot of you may be in this phase where you're having a lot of pieces moving around and removed from your life or from your experience. So this could be friends, this could be ideas, could be jobs, could be projects. It's sort of this feeling of you occupying a very empty room. It's like you're sitting in this blank space right now, and it feels really uncomfortable. One, it feels uncomfortable because like that journey of self-identification, it's very clear that you're no longer where you used to be, but it's also pretty apparent that you're not where you're going to be yet. So you're just sitting in this liminal space, feeling very foreign in your own body and really needing to take the time to kind of lock in your new identity, who you are now, after everything has already come and gone and before new things are established for yourself. With this sitting in this blank space energy, there's also a feeling of FOMO, like the stage is set, the lights are on, you probably have this feeling of something good is gonna happen, or like I feel like something is coming, or I feel like there's a shift in the air, like maybe you're seeing a lot of 555s, that type of thing, but it's like no one has showed up to your party yet. And there's a line in that song and she goes, "Stop, the beat is killing me," which makes me feel like you can hear other people's parties from your empty room. And that's bringing up this FOMO energy of, you know, maybe other people are really solidifying themselves in like their new identities and their new expression or their new communities, right? New relationships, new things. It feels like everybody's getting themselves set up, but you're still sitting here in almost like this period of extended adolescence is what I want to say, right? Not really sure of who you are right now, feeling like you haven't gotten an invitation to the next party, feeling like the people that were in your party are all of a sudden now kind of like scattering, and you're just left there by yourself. And to go back to that line, she goes, "Stop, the beat is killing me. Hey, Mr. DJ, let the music take me underground." And when I hear that, the beat is killing me, it makes me think of like the beat of your own heart. Have you ever had like one of those moments where you're just sort of in it in your head and there's nothing else around you to distract you from yourself, from your own emotions, from your own thoughts? It's like you can hear your heartbeat, right? It's like you can feel your brain cells growing. It's like you can hear the click of the fan. It's like eerily quiet where you are right now, and it leaves you with nothing to do but to ponder upon yourself. And that feels in a way like almost torturous. It's almost as if you wish someone would just tell you, "Hey, collective, this is who you are, and this is what you're about, and this is what you're going into next." You know what I mean? But it's like no one can really tell you your story better than you. But there is almost like this shadowy feeling of avoidance. I've been sitting here, this is the second time I tried to start your reading. I've been sitting here for like a half hour, kind of just like shuffling and starting the camera and then turning it off. It's like this very flippant and avoidant energy, which is not natural to me. You know me, I'm a firecracker. I just like to get in there. But I'm sitting here and I'm feeling very avoidant, like, oh, should I do this reading? Should I not do this reading? And I think that's like you trying to distract yourself from doing like a little bit of the inner work right now that is being asked of you. When I shuffled the Spirit Animal Oracle, two cards came out. One, the Nightingale Spirit, love is all around, 41, that breaks down to a 5. And then we also have the Horse Spirit, freedom is yours, card number 33. Now, when I'm looking at a nightingale, the name is making me think of Florence Nightingale, like the nurse, which is making me think of healing. But visually, I think these are really interesting because Evacuate the Dance Floor is like a club pop song. And I'm looking at this little tiny bird on top of this speaker, and I'm looking at this horse, and it looks like a wind's coming by and its mane is flowing, right? There's sort of like I whip my hair back and forth type of energy. So one, you might be being encouraged right now to incorporate more movement to the best of your ability back into your schedule, because movement is really helpful in breaking up some of that stuck and stagnant energy. Again, it's the idea like you've been in a stuck and stagnant energy for a while, but like you've been doing everything you possibly can do to get yourself out of it. And now the time has come where you feel like maybe it's actually working, and it feels like maybe a manifestation or something is getting closer to you, and you're looking for these external signs. And if anything, it feels like more stuff is falling away and more stuff is like being scattered to the wind, which is actually a very good sign. It means that clutter is being removed, space is being created, so that way it can occupy your life, right? But it feels like two of the other cards that we had gotten for you were the Elephant Spirit, Learn from the Past, and then the Snake Spirit, Time to Heal. 55 right here, which I think is really interesting. One, again, the Nightingale breaks down to 5. We have 55 over here. 33, it's a master number, but it does break down to 6. And 25 breaks down to 7. 6s talk about harmony, especially in the tarot. And 7s, for me, they talk a lot about challenge and the growth and personal evolution that comes through struggle. Sometimes struggle can actually be of a great benefit to us. When I'm looking at Learn from the Past, it gives me this impression that perhaps you guys still aren't very good at holding space. You have the ability to hold space for other people, but you have a more difficult time trying to hold space for yourself when you're in between cycles, when you're in between phases, because when you're in between this or that, there's nothing to work on but yourself. And there's this feeling of when you get into these liminal spaces where you're not quite a girl and you're not yet a woman, that beating of your heart, that fear, that anxiety, right? A lack of trust, like attachments, like all of these things that you have been working on, but like still exist within you because you're also a human being, right? Feels like they come up. It's difficult for you to like sit and process it. And so you end up sort of like sinking back down into the former lesson, because in that song, when she goes, "Hey DJ, take me underground," it's giving me this feeling of like the shadow. And when you're in these liminal spaces, it's a good time for empowerment work, and it's a really good time for shadow work. And so when you're able to lean into the beating of your heart and talk yourself through it, I'm feeling anxious, I don't feel like I trust the situation, I'm not really believing in myself, I'm not really feeling confident, maybe I feel uncomfortable because I don't know who this new version of myself is, right? When you avoid those feelings and having that internal dialogue, you end up dropping back down into the shadow, as opposed to bringing it up to create a foundation, to create the floor that you can then lean in to the new lessons and the new experience. So it feels like they're asking you to take note of your own personal patterns. When you move out of a cycle and you're sitting in the waiting room, so to speak, are you able to kind of pull up one of those magazines and figure out if you're in autumn or a spring? Or are you able to pull up like one of those Reader's Digest and learn something, or take that time to just contemplate in your mind? Or do you get frustrated, throw the magazine down, and then like run out of the room, avoiding the waiting time, the preparation time, the healing time that is necessary to put you in the best position to receive the thing that you feel like is coming for you? Does that make sense? Part of what this elephant is, like, elephants are beautiful. For me, they are really symbolic of the divine. They have these amazing memories. It's like they're really majestic, but they're also really strong and they're really powerful. Like, they have profound destructive capabilities as well. And so again, the question is, and I don't want to tell you, I just want to propose the question. Is it possible, is there a pattern for you that when you're in this liminal space, and especially when you're not really feeling solid in your own self-identification, that you lean into avoidance, that you lean into like self-destruction, and that you end up having to repeat old lessons over again because of it? Whereas if there is a pattern of this, if you look back and said to yourself, maybe if I just did dive a little bit more into the self-love work, maybe if I did try and reaffirm like my trust in self and my faith in the universe. Maybe if I did sit there and really reflect on who I am as a person to help carve out my sense of personal identity, right? Maybe it wouldn't have been as uncomfortable as I thought it was once I got into it, and maybe it would have allowed me to move into the next lesson because that's really the thing that I needed, right? And so again, from high school into college, it's a journey of independence. It's a journey of self-identification. It's also a journey of maturity as well. And so these are just things that I'm proposing to you that seem to be coming forward today, right? And again, movement, dance, because I also feel like one of the lessons for you guys right now has to do with like self-love and self-appreciation and self-gratitude. It reminds me of this song by Robyn, R-O-B-Y-N, and she has a song called Dancing on My Own. Maybe you haven't gotten an invitation to the next big party, to the next big thing yet. Maybe you don't have a lot of people on your dance floor. Maybe you can hear everyone else outside your window having a really good time, but do you have the ability to turn on your radio, shift in kind of like the frequency that you want to be in, and do you have the ability to whip your hair back and forth? Can you dance and have fun in the moment, even with everything being imperfect, even with you feeling maybe a little lost? Like, do you have the ability to tap in to maybe joy or maybe excitement or appreciation or play, right? Just for the sake of it. Are you able to be self-occupied, right? And self-possessed in a really positive way? And is that a better use of your time than avoiding a bit of the shadow or avoiding sort of this blank space? Because the thing is that part of holding space is occupying it with a different energy. In spellcraft and witchcraft, we say, if you banish, you must invoke. So when these things are being cleared out around you, if you do not then hold that space and fill it up through self-reflection or maybe shadow work or putting on your music or developing a new habit that maybe will sustain you or satisfy you, finding a new hobby, if you don't fill that space up with something else, then that blank space becomes a vacuum and then you get sucked into it. Back into the old lesson, back into depression, back into the cycle that you don't want to be in, right? And so these are just things that are sort of worth considering, right? Now, a couple of these Fountain Tarot cards popped out. Do I want to hit this first? Do you want to hit this Oracle? Maybe I want to hit this Oracle card, this Oracle deck. So I'm going to look at the Magic of You Oracle, and look, and there's keys on the back. Look at that. And then we're going to touch on this Fountain Tarot. Yeah, there's not enough air here. Avenor, make peace with your past. Look at this. This is so interesting. And I think I don't think it's interesting. I think it makes perfect sense, actually, that there's a division. There's a separation right here, right between the solar and the sacral, right? Where you derive like your energy from. Maybe that's part of it as well. Maybe that's going into this lesson about push this away, push the other cards away. We're on to something here. Maybe this is part of the self-identification thing. It's that oftentimes people in situations act as mirrors for us, and it acts as sort of like a barometer. It lets us know sort of like how we're doing, and it's easier for us to identify ourselves when we're in a community or when we're serving a role or a position. Or again, there are other people that are mirroring back to us sort of like who we are, where we fit, where we stand. Whereas because you're sitting in like this big empty room, because there is this blank space, you don't have anything to bounce off of. So you don't really know where you stand. You don't really know who you are, and you don't really know what you're doing. You don't really know where you fit in. And that is going to require you to draw your energy, your confidence out of a different power source, out of your own opinion of yourself versus just what's being reflected off of you by the other people in the room. And so I think maybe that also has to do with the sacral down here, that in which you nurture, that in which you hold within you. There's something, they're bringing up the hermit energy, and it's the ability to sustain your own fire, and that you have a difficulty sustaining your own fire if there aren't other things for you to immediately play off of. And you'd almost rather play off of people and players and pieces that are like really like fucked up for you, that are like really bad for you, rather than like try and find and harness that fire for yourself to keep yourself warm while you're waiting for like new players to enter on your personal cosmic stage. And I wonder if part of the sacral energy is a difficulty like manifesting things, bringing things from conceptualization into actualization, because there's a part of what you're working on or you're gestating or you're nurturing that like you don't actually like, because they're pieces borrowed from other people's stories. And I'm looking at this learn from the past, make peace with your past. I don't know. I'm wondering if there's like a little bit of this like copy and paste energy. And I think a lot of us deal with that in the sense of we all sort of grow up with this idea of who you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to do. And, you know, college, marriage, picket fence, kids, like all of that type of stuff. And so I think that this is like, this is a generational thing, right? This is a big Pluto and Scorpio, you know, kind of issue that we're seeing here. But there also is a sense of like fear here and anxiety about going against the grain, about creating something that's new and innovative. We're in Aquarius season now. Pluto is about to move into Aquarius as well. And so there's this whole theme about innovation and doing something new and being really creative and sort of forward focus. And it's hard to do that, like if you're continuing to like copy and paste from your old relationships or from what everyone else is doing, or again, needing to kind of see, it's like monkey see, monkey do, needing to see what other people are doing to see how you kind of fit in it, as opposed to just sort of like claiming your space because your own solar plexus are feeling really strong, and you're just kind of stepping forward saying like, this is who I am, right? Like, this is who I am. I don't know if there's space for me. I don't know if anyone needs this, but like, this is me showing up in my life in an authentic and original way. Does that make sense? And so there's a disconnect there, and feels like there's sort of like a clearing out that wants to be happening here. It's interesting. It almost looks like there's a lava lamp. I know it's really hard to see, but it almost looks like there's a lava lamp in here, which makes me think about how lava in and of itself is incredibly dangerous, right? Like it's profoundly hot and it can be really destructive, but once that lava cools, it becomes some of the most fertile ground on earth. And I think that's in relation to your own anger. There's this feeling here of perhaps like you spent so much of your youth or your adolescence, or, you know, even like your early 20s. I check my demographics. We're all, you know, we're all elder millennials and up over here, you know. But I wonder if there's like this anger about time, because while it looks like a lava lamp, it also sort of looks a little bit like a sundial. And so I wonder if there's sort of this repressed anger that you have about how you used or misused your time in your youth. Copying other people, doing what you thought was expected of you, all of that type of stuff, and realizing that a lot of how you identified then had more to do with who and what you were around versus like your own exploration of self. Does that make sense? And so it's almost in a way feeling like you are being encouraged to do a process now that you've never done before, but you're doing it as like a fully grown adult. It's the idea of like, this was something, this can be done at any time, but there's sort of this feeling, it almost feels like you have, woulda, coulda, shoulda, right? Like, if I had done this at 22, or if I had done this at 18 years old, then like I wouldn't have to be figuring out who I really am for the first time now in my 30s, right? Or in my 40s or in my 50s. And so it almost feels like this is very, very late homework, figuring out how to identify who you are as an individual without anyone else's assessment or without anyone else's input. And so there's an anger at the misuse of time in the past, but there's also a need to have compassion for the younger version of yourself who didn't fucking know anything and who also wasn't set up for success. And so I think that adds into it, right? We're getting very philosophical now, but like that adds into it. It's the idea of like, nobody prepared me for this. Like, this wasn't modeled for me, but also having to have like compassion that like broken people raise other broken people, right? Like it's a whole ball of yarn. It's like a whole alphabet soup, and you are kind of stuck again, sitting in this blank room all by yourself, trying to organize the letters in your alphabet soup to somehow make a coherent sentence, you know, a short bio about who it is you actually are. And so this feels sort of torturous, right? It's kind of the idea of, again, feeling foreign in your own body, kind of wanting to climb out of your own skin, but in sort of like this tearing away of sort of unearthing some of this anger of having to sit there and listen to the beat of your own heart until it's like kind of pounding in your ears, somewhere in there, clarity opens up. The hermit's lantern turns back on, and it feels like you get a better idea of what the hell you're doing and why you're doing it. And then when that happens, it feels like the regrowth happens. Things start to come together. I wouldn't even be surprised if, like, physically as you move through this process, you start like feeling a little bit differently in your body, almost like the lights come back on, like you're feeling a little bit more, you're feeling stronger, right? Maybe there's some aches or some pains or even some like gastrointestinal issues. Not a doctor, but some gastrointestinal issues that become ease. Maybe they're not as severe as they were. I do think there's a correlation between like the mind and the body, obviously. So these are just some things to sort of think about, right? And it's so, I didn't even notice this, but this is card number 1, which makes me think of Aries, right? It's like the big I am. I am what I am. And I was doing, I don't remember which reading it was. I don't remember if it was like a weekly Zodiac reading for the Patreon or if it was a monthly reading, but that song I Am What I Am by Lady Blackbird, I might have been a Taurus reading on Patreon yesterday, but she has this song, I think it's a cover of, it says, I am what I am. And so it's just sort of reminding me of that. So you might want to listen to that Lady Blackbird song. There is a solution to every problem. This is interesting because it brings forward a little bit of this hangman energy. You can only see her feet, right? And you see how they're sort of tied up by these vines? One of those might actually be a snake. So there's definitely a lot kind of going on with like the root here, creativity, sexuality. Now with sexuality, it makes sense because let's look at the Lover's card in tarot for a second. I'm going to give you a mini tarot history lesson right now. So in 78 Degrees of Wisdom, Rachel Pollack talks about how the Lover's card can sometimes not just talk about the Geminian choice or relationships. It talks about the expression of self-identification, because oftentimes it is when we reach like sexual maturity, it's when we hit puberty that all of a sudden we have our own personal desires that have nothing to do with what anyone else wants from us, right? Usually you hit puberty, your body starts to change, your mind starts to change, and all of a sudden like you separate from your parents a little bit, right? All of a sudden they're not these megaliths in your life, they're not gods. Now they have fallibility, and you start thinking about yourself and what you want, and like this new level of like identification comes out. And so that's just making me think of that for some reason when it comes to that. Again, talking about like the snakes and the root, there could be like some sexual repression that you have been experiencing, which again may be because of a disconnection from your body, disconnection from the pleasure principle in your life, which is also affecting your creativity, your confidence. Again, FOMO, a lot of that like solar plex stuff that we were talking about before. But in general, like this feels a lot like the hangman energy, just because she's sort of all tied up. And it says there's a solution for every problem, which just means, as we've learned from the hangman, sometimes we have to sort of like step out of the ego for a moment and kind of do the Missy Elliott, put our thing down, flip it, and reverse it, so that way we can get a little bit of a new perspective on things. Sometimes a shift in perspective can shift your life. I know that from personal experience. So, looking at the Fountain Tarot, we have the Four of Coins. We also have Temperance. The first thing that sticks out is sort of, there's a centerpiece, right? In this card, it's all of the Pentacles. And in this card, it sort of seems to be, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's a crystal. It's some kind of geometric shape. It looks like a geometric box that's sort of like being separated, right? Very similar to this, which feels a little bit like the cleansing and the healing. And I would go as far to say that I don't think this is something that you're doing entirely on your own. I think this is something that your divinities are helping you do, but you sort of have to be the one to go, okay, I'm not going to avoid it. I am going to address this. Like, I'm going to address this so I can figure out how to dance at my own party until everyone else shows up, right? When we're looking at the Four of Coins, we're looking at something that is hidden. And in this card, it's placed in winter, right? So this is something that has sort of been frozen, crystallized inside of you. And it obviously has not been able to be thawed out or burned away through anger. So that's interesting, because anger gets shit done, and anger will really wake you up and kind of motivate you in another direction. But what happens when anger doesn't work? You have to find something else. And I think that's what Temperance is sort of asking you, because the Seven of Cups comes up next. And here we're looking at sort of the realms of possibility. So some of this may be in terms of like spiritual and energetic healing work that you do yourself. It feels almost really important, especially for the self-esteem, that like you do this yourself with the assistance of your divinities and your ancestors. It almost feels as though you're having to move from one cup to the next and use the different tools in it in order to unlock this sense of self, in order to kind of make peace with the past, in order to show compassion for like misused time, like the whole ball of yarn that we were just talking about. You need different tools, because it feels like while the anger needs to be directed, maybe it needs to be directed, it needs to be addressed. Fire isn't going to put out that fire and bring it back down to sort of this neutral place, this healing place that Temperance wants it to be in. So we're going to have to work through things like our emotions. We're going to have to work through things like groundedness, time management, our body. Don't forget, Pentacles in the tarot, it doesn't just talk about the mones, it also talks about your body. We have Pentacles. Temperance is technically a fire card. It's Sagittarius. And then we have these cups. What are we missing? We're missing air. We're missing the analysis of our thoughts, our beliefs, our ideologies. That is why the Suit of Swords in the tarot is the most harrowing suit to pursue. Wow, look at this. High Priestess, so I ain't wrong. We also have the Page of Wands here. The cool thing about this is that, one, the Page of Wands can indicate good and exceptionally exciting news. And with the High Priestess, if before, look, the star at the bottom, before I was talking about how you may have this feeling of like, I just feel like something's coming. I feel like something is shifting. Like I feel like good news is on the way. I'm going to have a breakthrough, something like that. And you might be honestly gaslighting yourself, thinking that it's just wishful thinking. I don't think that it is. So the funny thing is that it almost feels like part of the reason you avoid some of this work is because you think it'll never end. But it actually will, because with the Page of Wands, the High Priestess, and the Star, it says that you are going in the right direction, that healing is available for you right now, and that your intuition is on point when it's telling you that things are shifting for you and like better is coming. So the idea here is wanting to set yourself up to just do this work now, like eat the friggin' vegetables, so that way, like when it comes, when it lands, you actually are in a capacity to receive it, and not just to receive it, but also to maintain it. I've said it before and I'll say it again. It's one thing to receive a blessing. It's another thing to maintain and live underneath a blessing. It's the idea of, and I've done readings, I've done personal client readings where I've told the client, because there are shadow aspects, like, listen, you're really going to have to work on things like emotional regulation and, you know, like emotional intelligence. And because the person that you want to be with is not going to be able to sustain a relationship with someone who is emotionally immature. Do you know what I mean? Or isn't able to, have civilized conversations or work through conflict or any of that stuff. Like the healthy relationship that you want, you're going to need these skills in order to actually have it and sustain it, right? That is very similar to this, because if there is success, if there is a breakthrough, if there is a relationship, if there is something that you are wanting to bring forth in your life, we want to make sure that you're able to take it on with like graciousness, and you're going to be able to see it through and not destroy it or sabotage it or talk yourself out of it, right? For some of you, let's say you want to be like really successful in business. That's amazing. But you're also going to end up being in rooms with like some pretty heavy hitters, and like you're going to need to not fall into envy or into jealousy or into unnecessary competitiveness due to low self-esteem. You're going to need to show up confident, sure of yourself, speaking with a tone of authority. You're going to have to be a good team player. You're going to have to hear other people's ideas. You're going to have to be innovative as opposed to competitive. You're having a moment right now. You are not in this liminal space to torture you. Seemingly you are not in sort of this empty room just to try and like give you a hard time. It's because this blank room that you're in, it may as well be a gym. There may as well be like a treadmill and like some weights and like a jumping rope in there. In a way, it's sort of like your Rocky montage moment, but instead of like grinding it out for capitalism, you're doing the internal work, right? You're working on self-love. You're working on how to be self-identified and self-possessed. You're learning how to have fun and appreciation for like who you are and like where you are in this present moment, even if it's not as perfect as you want it to be. You're learning how to release, surrender, and have compassion for the younger version of you who got you here, and also for the other people that contributed to the molding of that younger person, right? So it's a lot. It's kind of like a bouillon cube. Like there's a lot of flavor. Like it packs a big punch in this tiny little cube that is this room that you're in, right? But if you were able, through sitting with these emotions, right? Through processing these thoughts, through finding a way to identify yourself on your own terms, this small little blip on the screen of your experience, it's going to be delicious. And it's going to provide that nice foundation, just like a nice stock, right? For the rest of the meal, for the other things that want to come in for you, right? And there's also a nice mix here between, you know, some shadow work, but also like some fun homework as well, like dancing, like movement, right? Like shaking things out, like letting things go and not taking yourself so seriously and being able to like occupy yourself and like, you know, like there's more challenging bits, but there's also really nice bits, just like I was saying before. 5, 6, 7, 5. Through this struggle, through this conflict, you are expanding and evolving into a greater sense of personal harmony, which sets you up energetically, and it also sets you up as a person to actually hold these things that you want to bring into your life without allowing these unnoted, unseen, unaddressed aspects of you to come forward like a thief in the night and rip them from you. So, this is what I have. This video is only a half hour. Wow, I feel like we've been here for so long. Maybe I am a bouillon cube. Perhaps I have patched a bit of a whatever. You know what I'm saying. We're still in the post shadow of Mercury retrograde, and I still can't talk for shit. Like, I'm just still tripping over my words and stuttering. I think I have like a week and a half, and I should be back to like a fully functioning human being. But this is what I have for you. I hope that this was helpful for you. I really do. Again, this is just like a collective general message. So, you know, if it doesn't apply to you, just let it fly away. But if it does, then I hope it was of service to you. I love you guys so much. If you are looking for Zodiac readings, you can find them on Patreon on the Bumblebee tier. Otherwise, I'm going to post a link on Friday for you guys to rent the individual Zodiac readings from this week if you feel so inclined. Is there anything else? My Zoom classes are starting back up. So if you are interested in joining our tarot school, our first Zoom class is going to be on the foundation of tarot. We're working on links, we're working on aspects, we're working on tarot associations, we're playing games. That is going to be on February 1st on a Wednesday, 5:30 Eastern Standard Time. You can sign up for one of the classes on my website. You can also sign up for personal readings over there as well. I love you very much. Thank you for stopping by, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.